Okay, so let's start. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So welcome to Rocking Agile. First of all, who am I? Sometimes still I don't know this. But for the last 10 years, I have been working as a product owner, business development, and a project manager. Sometimes at the same time at Sapo Portugal Telecom, both in waterfall and agile projects. My name is Nuno Pereira. And right now I'm a proud delivery lead at Equal Experts. So here we go. So I'm going to take you on a musical journey, essentially about a bit of my life. So it's a story of resilience. As you will see, the easiest way to do is to give up. Of changes. Life is made of changes, so does the agile transformation path. So if you can live this way, you won't be able to go down this road. And trial and error, it's really quite important. Errors and mistakes are part of life. Suck it up. The important is to learn with them and to correct them quickly. And one of the abilities of Agile is to do that. So retrospectives, a good daily communication are all part of Agile and of a rock band too. Why not? So this is me. Since an early age, I enjoyed music and apparently booze due to the whiskey glass. When I was young and going down the memory lane, my grandma said that I destroyed all the turntables and my dad's vinyls. I wanted to be a DJ. They didn't get it. Still, I went down a different path. Nowadays, I have a 6-year-old daughter, but she knows she cannot be near my records due to this story. No, I wasn't into glam rock, although the peak of glam rock was in the 80s. I was into my dad's vinyls that were essentially pop. The thing about rock is the attitude and the fun you can have with it. I was lucky enough to study in a music college very near my house, but I was a misfit. So they said that I had no talent or ear for music. Fortunately enough, my mother said, "Well, why don't you try again? Don't give up." So she paid extra the college for me to learn music. So at 12, I started, the fat guy in green, it's me. So at 12, I started having private piano lessons. Well, I believe I only had a couple of classes after this audition. I really didn't like the piano. So it wasn't my thing. As you will see, guitars is where I feel most comfortable and can rock out. Almost everybody, when I started playing guitar at the age of 14, for me a big incentive was that I could learn a Metallica song. It was really easy, so everybody that starts playing rock guitar can play Nothing Else Matters. It's a classic, so these are not my guitars, but my first one was a Fender Strat. At the time, and this is important to give context, MTV was really big. It was about music videos and not Jersey Shores. And as a music lover like myself, there are always a couple of records that change your life. And this is really important to give context to the story. When I was 10, in 91, came out a couple of records that changed the rock scene for me. Nirvana's Nevermind, I think they came out with 2 months difference. I think one in June and other in August. Nirvana already had the Bleach one, a bit on the punk, but they completely blew with Nevermind, and the Black Album, Metallica were already big, but they started filling stadiums. So these were the albums that got me into guitar. But the ones that got me into composing were 2 Portuguese albums. So a little later on, I started picking the guitar in a different way. So I wanted to start composing my own songs. And these 2 albums, so the first album by Blind Zero called Trigger, I got access to, and the Moonspeller Religious, their second album, I got access to them through cassette trading. Nowadays it's Spotify and everything, but back in the days you did cassette trading. So fortunately enough, a couple of years ago, I had access to limited editions, and I knew the bands, and I got to hang out with them and have all of them autographed. So at the age of 15, what I decided, I found a couple of guys in college, in the music college, and we decided to make a band. It was called No Sense, obviously because the music didn't make any sense, still doesn't when I listen to the cassette demos. But our families gave us the support for us to rehearsal at home. I believe I couldn't do that to my daughter, but they did. They were crazy enough, all of them. Well, this transformed, and you will see that the presentation, it's a lot about changes. So 1 year after, we changed No Sense to No Soul, which is inspired by a song from the Blind Zero Trigger album. We played for 3 years. So again, this fat guy is me. This is the first time I was in a proper studio to record demo for 4 hours. After we finished, there was Quinzinho de Portugal entering the studio. So, but we did a rock demo. The guy on the left was the keyboard player, and it's a friend of mine from the college that from the age 5 we know each other. Curiously enough, he's the keyboard of my current band. But we split it. It takes a while to get back to that story. So we did a couple of demos in 98 cassettes. Were still very used. They were cheap, and it was the easiest way to share our music. And we sold a lot of demos. Everything was DIY by ourselves. We got in a couple of compilations. But I went to college, and we had to stop. Our paths followed different ways. The band still lasted 3 years. I got graduated. I got a degree in management. I started working at Sapo. And then I got married. And actually, it was my wife that got me back in music. She knew my passion for playing, and she saw that my Fender Strat was getting rusty. So she challenged me to join with a couple of friends and try to play again as a band. So in the list of awkward names, at 26, I started Public Pervert. That's named after an Interpol song. And this was the first lineup of the band. Essentially, we started as a covers band, and then we started making some originals, said, why not bring the vocalist in? And this was the first EP we recorded after a couple of months. We had 4 songs or 5 songs. We never released it because it was completely rubbish. So we decided to fire the vocalist and do a different approach. So back to a trio, we decided to record another EP, but only with guests. So we challenged, we had the instrumentals, and we challenged a couple of musicians from different bands to play with us. You can see by the cover how desperate I was. But a record label called Necrosymphonic Records, from the lead singer of La Chanson Noire, picked us up and released this EP. Only after this was released, we decided to play live again and to have a band. But it didn't last long. So Public Pervert broke before we started recording our first album. Right before entering in the studio, after a very, very bad gig that Sergio went to. So he knows the story. It was really bad. And basically, as I was the main composer, I was left with an album worth of songs in my hands. So I was really frustrated, and after a couple of months, my wife, again, she encouraged me to start something at home on my own without the pressure that I had. So to slow down a bit my passion for music. I was 30 by that time. I started composing new stuff, but in order to continue, I needed to do something different. So the inspiration to start doing a demo came by an article of the Anonymous organization, and it just clicked, and that approach made me do a song that later on became We Are Anonymous. So I made a really shitty demo at home, like in 1 hour, 2 hours, and I sent to a guy that I didn't know online, but I followed. That was David Paes. He plays in a lot of bands, like Topica, the guy from Ramp, 120, Low Torque, The Ninth Cell. And I added him as a friend on Facebook and said, well, I played in a band, I have a couple of demos, so what do you think about this song? And he listened to the demo and said, well, let's make a single out of this. So we had one session together, we recorded everything, then he did all the production, and that's how Ipsis Verbis was born. The song ended up, curiously, we did a video clip for it, with the help of Sergio again. And we did a video and a single, and it ended up, curiously enough, being used in several anonymous channels, including in the Portuguese one. So, but I was still alone in the project, okay? Then I met that guy, the keyboard player. He lived nearby, and one day on the subway station we met again. And he said, we started talking about music, and then I said I had some demos, and he said, well, I want to go back to music. Show me the demo, send me. And so he said, well, let's start playing. Let's see what comes out of this. And for a couple of months, we decided to try only the two of us. And we had a couple of songs, new songs, and we decided this was time for a full band. Fortunately enough, the time is 2014, and it's not about trade taping or putting an ad on Blitz. You had ad platforms, and that's how we found our drummer and our vocalist. The bassist was by word of mouth with a co-worker of mine. As the founder of the band and has the previous lessons learned from the other bands, I wanted to make this band different. It was important for the band to prevail. So everybody had to be equal. I couldn't be the leader. It was quite important to be this way. So this was the vision that here there are no bosses. So I can be like the equivalent of a scrum master or a delivery lead, but all of us have to be on board. That's the way that bands should be. With that approach, that in 2014 was Ipsis Verbis, in 2015 became Secret Symmetry. And the name has to be decided in one afternoon. But I'll talk about another change. You will have a lot of changes within the presentation. In July 2014, we had the complete band, and we had 9 songs. And out of the 9 songs, we decided to record 5 of them. We recorded with Fernando Matias, who is a known producer. He has worked with Sinistro, Bizarra Locomotiva, Municipal, Linda Martini, and the design was made by Pedro Daniel, who has worked with a lot of bands, including Gonçalo's band too. So in November 2014, we signed with a record label, It Real Sound Works, and in March 2015, the record was out. But until we know how the record went, a month after the record was completed, we spent a month in vacation, and we listened a lot to the records, and we decided to take lessons learned, or what sometimes in Agile we call a post-mortem. Some of the things we needed to improve were we had to do pre-production of the songs. We needed to record the drums completely acoustic. We did half acoustic, half electric. Don't record in the summer or in a studio where you don't have air conditioning. It's very bad. But the positive was that the producer and the designer went very well. The result of that is at the end of 2015, Emerge ended up being chosen for several tops of the best Portuguese EPs of the year, which of course was an honor for me. I don't know why they did it, but as a musician, after 2 months that I recorded, I was completely, I thought that everything I recorded was wrong. So I wanted to do different things. This is Secret Symmetry nowadays, and let's see how Secret Symmetry works in the Agile world. So this is basically every team project. So there is a guy that does 99% of the work, another doesn't disappears and appears in the end. This is a classic, especially in big corporate companies. So, but let me present the band, and that is quite important for the story. So this is the bassist. He's a pastry chef. This is me. The keyboardist is a financial controller. The vocalist is an exploration geologist. And this is the drummer, not a real drummer, but he's a director commercial in an enterprise that does animal food. So what we decided to do, essentially after we had this lineup, the band's lineup, a definition of done. So basically we decided where we wanted to go. This was what we needed to pursue to get to record our first album. That was the goal of everybody that was on board. I don't have time to go through it. And another thing that essentially you do a lot is working remotely. So I think that here you had one talk about it, but in the Agile conference you see a lot of talking, but bands can do that too. So Gmail, Facebook Messenger, Google Drive, Calendar, digital audio workstations. With this, everybody, we record every rehearsal. We share it. We have the demo. So even if you don't go to the rehearsal, you can rehearse at home. So you don't lose work. You will continue to do new versions of the songs, and the band continues to evolve. This is our board. I didn't have time to take a picture with the Post-its, but this is the one I have. I did a similar one on Trello. So when we do our weekly rehearsal, we go through the things we have to do. Yes, it's not always that fun because you have bureaucracy still in bands. So this is our main board. And now for the top 10 of tips and tricks. Changes in the team members. So after we finished the EP, one of the guys went out. So he had to live in Oporto, so we lost the bass player. And a couple of months after, we lost the vocalist. So we had to do what you can call a discovery phase. And we had a couple of songs that were already written, but we had to refactor them. Okay, with the new vocalist, we had to go again through all the songs. It was worth, but that's part of stuff. Tip 2. This is Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you know him. He's a very well-known author. If you check Outliers, he gives an example of how people mastered. They did a study back in 1990s about violinists, and they usually master the instrument with 10,000 hours of playing. And that happened the same transformation with the Beatles. They only became the Beatles when they went to Germany to do a big tour where they had to be together and played every day in small clubs. They played a lot. That was the time when they became what they became when they came back to England. So he says that it's not all about natural talent, but when you play in a band or when you work with a team, you get the muscle, not on the first week, but when you continue to work. Tip number 3, decision making. So it was quite important that all the band members were involved in all decisions. So it didn't mean that we had to agree all with everything, so use pros and cons or votes, but it shouldn't be one guy telling everything. Tip number 4, shit happens. And that's true. We had the studio booked for this month, and in August, our drummer got a broken foot, so we had to change. Tip 5, silence is golden. And it's true, I learned this with my wife. But sometimes it's quite important in order for you to fix some conflicts. It's better not to go in the heat of the moment and just take a break and then talk calmly afterwards. Tip number 6, the producer has a business analyst. So Jeff Patton in his user mapping book does a good example of this. You might know the guy on the right. It's Dave Grohl from Nirvana and Foo Fighters. Does anybody know the guy on the left? You do? Who is he? It's Rick Rubin. He's one of the biggest producers in rock. Not only in rock, he's worked with Slayer, System of a Down, Metallica, Eminem, LL Cool J, Beastie Boys. So he has a big curriculum. So this is basically sometimes you need someone from out of your team to help you out, to have a different perspective. You have to be really, really a grown up to have that idea. Tip number 7, team has a collective. You can have a lot of Ronaldos and a lot of Petrucci's. I don't know if you know this guy, but it's the lead guitarist of Dream Theater, one of the best, at least for me, or most respected prog metal bands in the world. They can live with their egos. They're all Petrucci's in the band, and their talent. But most of the bands broke up due to that. So team has to work as one. Make changes often. Tip number 8. So this is our rehearsal room. Last week we changed again, and the disposition and the room. So we had an opportunity, and usually I do that with the teams I work, not only in the band, that twice a month you should change something. It helps you out. You can work or not, but it's not good to be always in the comfort zone. Tip number 9, we prototype. Okay, so basically we do demos, we test, we exchange ideas, so we have a basis on what to test, so it can be an equivalent to TDD in some way, but this is actually a small part of our rehearsal room. So we have the walls filled with the structure of the song, so we can scratch it and do it in real time. Tip number 10, have fun. Even if it's a hobby or not, or if it's your job, it's quite important for you to have fun. Live the experience. So some of you might know the Agile Software Development Manifesto, and I decided to do the Rocking Agile Manifesto. So basically, individuals and interactions over instruments and egos, working songs over too much discussions on music theory, that happens a lot, band collaboration over one-man show, and embrace change over following a plan. So, what comes next? In January, I hope that no one breaks their foot or anything else. We'll enter Dynamic Studios in Lisbon to record with the producer Ricardo Fernandes, so we decided to change the producer. He has worked with Topeka, Fokker, and a couple of other bands. It is booked for 1 month. It took 2 years in the making, the record, and I'm really proud of what's sounding, and it's not online, so it's quite different of what's available right now. Still, there is a long road ahead to keep us the motivation, because there are always ups and downs in everything. This presentation is still a work in progress. New steps and challenges will appear pretty soon. What's important is that make it work. What I try to accomplish with this presentation is to show you that Agile can be adopted in different realities. Usually it's basically for IT, or it's most used for IT, but it can work out in different. What is really important is that you adapt and evolve with the changes. Embrace change. This guy embraced. Yeah, this was the 2008 Obama presidential run, and it was all about the change. People wanted a change. And we're getting to the finish line, so I'll leave you with Q&A. No? You have one. You have to talk to the mic.
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Sound check. 1.
Thank you for your talk, Mr. Nuno. It was very pleasant. Thank you. I'm a big fan of music, and I look at the past during the grunge era, where everything was a bit messed up, and there was a lot of bands with drug problems, and they managed to split, get together, and they were doing this invariably. That's sort of a messed up reunion and production of music when some members were on drugs, some members have like problems, family problems, their own personal problems. Every time they were together, they needed to do something. Your approach is a more linear approach with plenty of organization. I don't know, my question is that approach not being the approach that these bands in the past, great bands like Metallica, you mentioned Metallica, Nirvana also, they had their own problems. They come up with great songs, great music. But now with this approach, Agile, where everything is more organized, do you think that we can still achieve that the same results that these bands achieved? You know, it's great. I'm all up for being agile, it being more constructive, organized. But my question is, are we losing that bit for imagination, for fantasy, for people sharing feelings?
This doesn't mean you have the creative part. So you compare two bands. So on the case of Nirvana, you know how it ended. On the case of Metallica, they got really organized because they have a Lars Ulrich, who is a drum player, and he organizes every structure. And they went. You have a movie about it. I think it's Some Kind of Monster, where they had a psychology session, and a psychology had to work with them along their reach, so they can do that. It's cheaper to try and do Agile and talk to each other, but they're rock stars, they have to do a psychologist. So I don't think you lose the creativity. You still have good records coming out. It's difficult to create because you have a lot of stuff coming out nowadays. Back in the 90s, you had a lot of records weekly, but it was really tough for you to spread your music. It had high costs, it was not published in the internet. I don't think that affects the creativity. This is just a way of working, not the way of composing. So that is after the composing stage. I still compose where I always compose, so at home, or sometimes we do some jams and check how it works. So, and I've read a lot of musicians, it just depends. I usually say when they stop doing drugs or they cut their hair, that album is going to be pure shit. And sometimes it is, but if it only comes from drugs, I never had that problem in bands, even in the drinking one. So that's one of the bases of the people we have in the band. No booze and no drugs. But that is us. What can adapt to us, this is our reality. What can adapt to us can adapt to another band in a different way. That's how you work with teams. You can have both teams working on the same project, but separated, and they are completely different teams with different ways of working. So I don't think that affects the creativity. You can still get, probably not Neverminds because it's unique due to the time, but you still have good albums coming out.
Okay, I hope so. Yeah.
Any more questions? No? Okay, so thank you, and don't forget, rock on!